If you click off this video in the next 5 minutes, nothing bad will happen today. Your rent will still be due. Your paycheck will still arrive. Your life will look exactly the same tomorrow. But something dangerous will happen quietly. You'll go back to believing the same lie that has already cost you years. The lie is simple, clean, reasonable. If I just made more money, I'd be fine. That belief sounds harmless, logical even. It's also the reason people stay stuck for decades. Not because it's stupid, because it's incomplete. And incomplete beliefs are the most expensive ones. Let me prove it. You know people who earn more than you, sometimes a lot more, and yet they're stressed, behind, one unexpected expense away from chaos. This isn't rare. Household surveys run year after year by the US Federal Reserve show that even many higher income earners struggle to handle small emergencies without debt. So here's the uncomfortable question almost no one asks out loud. If income creates wealth, why do so many people with more money still feel broke? Don't answer yet, because if you get this wrong, everything that follows will fail. This isn't about getting rich. It's about escaping financial gravity. Gravity is the force that pulls your money back to zero no matter how much you earn. And unless you understand how that force works, every raise just makes the fall harder. Here's the situation most people live in. You work, you get paid. For a few hours, maybe a few days, you feel lighter. Then life starts charging you rent for existing. Groceries, bills, gas, small treats, subscriptions you forgot about, expenses that feel unavoidable. And suddenly the money is gone. Not wasted, not blown, but just absorbed. This pattern shows up clearly in cash flow data tracked by institutions like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which follows how real paychecks actually move through real bank accounts. This is usually where people turn the blame inward. I'm bad with money. I lack discipline. I should budget better. That self-blame feels productive. It's also a trap because it keeps the real problem hidden. Here's the truth most people never hear. If discipline were the answer, most people would already be wealthy. They're not, which means the problem isn't effort, it's architecture. Wealth isn't built by trying harder inside a broken system. It's built by replacing the system entirely. The real enemy here isn't low income, it's volatility. Economists who study poverty and scarcity, including researchers like Senhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir, have shown that instability itself causes damage independent of income level. When your financial life is volatile, every surprise becomes a crisis. Every crisis forces short-term thinking, and short-term thinking destroys long-term plans. This isn't a mindset flaw, it's a biological response. Controlled experiments in behavioral economics show that financial stress reduces cognitive bandwidth, planning ability, impulse control, and patience all drop measurably under pressure. So when advice tells stressed people to just think long-term, it's asking someone in a fire to calmly design a new house. That advice fails because it ignores how humans actually function. Here's something almost no one explains honestly. People with low margins make more money decisions than people with high margins. Not fewer, more. Every dollar matters more, so every dollar demands attention. Should I buy this? Can I afford that? What if something goes wrong? That constant evaluation drains energy. Psychologists call this decision fatigue, and it quietly kills wealth. High earners automate or outsource decisions. Low earners drown in them. This is why traditional budgeting fails so often. Budgets multiply decisions. They force you to negotiate with yourself over and over again. And when you're already tired, stressed, and stretched thin, negotiation turns into surrender. This is why people fall off budgets. Not because they don't care, because the system asks more of them than they have to give. Here's what actually matters. Wealth doesn't start with more discipline. It starts with fewer decisions. Every financially stable household documented in long-term studies shares one trait: automation. Bills, savings, and spending limits are decided once, not every day. That brings us to the first real lever: expense locking. Expense locking isn't about deprivation. It's about freezing your cost of survival below your earning potential. Most people do the opposite. They earn more, then slowly, quietly let life expand to meet it. Economists call this lifestyle inflation or hedonic adaptation, and it's been observed consistently across decades of income data. Better apartment, better car, better food, better conveniences. Nothing dramatic, just upgrades. And every upgrade raises the floor you have to stand on just to survive. That's why raises don't feel like relief. They just buy nicer versions of the same pressure. Expense locking works because it attacks volatility. You don't cut joy, you cut variability. Same meals, same bills, same routines. Boring is the feature. Boring creates predictability. Predictability creates safety. Safety creates mental space.
This isn't theory. Longitudinal data from the Federal Reserve's household surveys shows that people with even modest liquid buffers behave differently under stress. Fewer missed payments, fewer panicked decisions, fewer high-interest traps. Stability doesn't just protect money, it unlocks better thinking. Without stability, every plan is fragile. That's why investment advice is so often dangerous for people without buffers. Markets don't care about your timing needs. Emergencies do. If you're forced to sell during a crisis, long-term returns don't matter. So the first investment isn't stocks, it's insulation against bad timing. An emergency fund isn't savings, it's insurance. Once stability exists, growth becomes possible. This is where many people make their next mistake. They hear wealth and immediately think side hustle, another job, another grind, another layer of exhaustion. But wealth isn't created by doing more of what already drains you. It's created by leverage. Labor economics research consistently shows that income grows fastest when people move closer to revenue, optimization, or decision-making, not when they simply add hours. Leverage means 1 unit of effort produces more than 1 unit of result. Hourly work has no leverage. That doesn't make it bad, it makes it limited. The mistake is trying to escape hourly income before extracting its leverage. People quit too early, pivot too fast, chase passive income without control. That's why most side hustles collapse. The first upgrade isn't quitting your job, it's repositioning inside value flows. Money moves through systems. Whoever improves movement gets paid more. Sales moves money, operations moves money, optimization moves money. These skills aren't glamorous. They're paid because they touch outcomes. You don't escape low income by starting over. You escape by attaching yourself closer to money. This shows up clearly in wage growth and promotion data. Roles that influence outcomes consistently outpace effort-based roles over time. And this doesn't require a new job. The assistant who improves scheduling saves time. The worker who reduces waste saves money. The employee who improves conversion creates revenue. Companies don't pay for effort. They pay for results. That's where skill stocking matters. Not random skills, adjacent ones. One skill rarely changes income. 2 or 3 aligned skills often do. But there's a problem. Skill building pays later, and delayed rewards are hard to care about when you're under pressure. Behavioral research shows that stress heavily discounts the future, so the system has to work on 2 timelines at once. Fast wins, slow gains. Negotiate 1 bill, cancel 1 subscription, sell 1 unused item. Immediate relief. At the same time, learn 1 revenue-adjacent skill, apply it weekly, track progress monthly. Evidence creates motivation, not the other way around. People who escape aren't more motivated, they're more convinced. Now comes the most dangerous phase, because everything you've heard so far works. Reducing volatility works, locking expenses works, building leverage works. And if that were the whole story, this would be easy. It's not. Because there's a moment, identified repeatedly in long-term wealth studies, where progress collapses. It doesn't feel like failure, it feels like relief. Income rises, pressure drops, breathing gets easier. And that's when the system breaks. Not because something goes wrong, because something finally goes right. Rules loosen, exceptions multiply, stability gets mistaken for safety. And slowly, quietly, the floor rises again. Bills creep up, commitments grow. Lifestyle inflates just enough to bring fragility back.
And by the time people notice, they're where they started, just with nicer stuff. This is the most dangerous phase of wealth building. Not desperation, not struggle, comfort. Because comfort whispers that the war is over. It isn't. The difference between people who escape permanently and people who cycle forever comes down to whether they recognize this moment for what it is, not a finish line, but a test. And the rules change here. What worked to get you stable won't protect you next. What once felt safe becomes the trap. If the system isn't adjusted before this phase arrives, it quietly erases years of progress. That's the moment most people never see coming, and everything that follows depends on whether you do.
The problem with that moment, the comfort moment, is that it convinces you the system worked. And it did, just not completely. What most people don't realize is that wealth isn't destroyed by mistakes. It's destroyed by reversion. Reversion is when your behavior quietly drifts back to default the moment pressure eases. The brain hates tension. As soon as it senses safety, it tries to return to what feels normal. This is why people relapse into old spending patterns right after a raise, why bonuses disappear within months, why progress stalls right when it should accelerate. Behavioral economists have tracked this for decades. When constraints loosen, habits reassert themselves unless the environment has been permanently changed. That word matters. Permanently. Most people treat financial changes as temporary efforts, temporary frugality, temporary discipline, temporary focus. They tell themselves, once things are better, I can relax. But wealth doesn't respond to temporary behavior. It only responds to permanent systems. That's why the next shift isn't tactical, it's structural. Up to now, the goal was stability. From here on, the goal is irreversibility. Irreversibility means making progress hard to undo, even on your worst days, even when you're tired, even when life gets loud again. This is where most advice becomes dangerous. People are told to invest aggressively, take risks, or scale fast. But irreversibility isn't about speed, it's about removing exits. The safest wealth builders don't rely on motivation to stay consistent. They rely on friction. Think about how taxes are paid. They're withheld before you ever see the money. You don't wake up every month and decide to be responsible. The system decides for you. That's not willpower, that's design. The same principle applies to personal wealth. Money that never touches your checking account is money that never negotiates with your emotions. It never argues with you late at night. It never justifies this one exception. It never needs motivation. This is why automation consistently outperforms intention. Large-scale studies on retirement savings show that automatic enrollment and automatic contributions massively outperform opt-in systems, even when contribution rates are identical. People don't save more because they suddenly care more. They save more because not saving requires effort. So once stability exists, the next move is forced separation. Income gets split at the source. One stream for survival, one stream for growth, one stream that never comes back. Not later, not when things calm down, immediately. This isn't about percentages, it's about direction. Money must be routed before feelings get involved. That's how reversion is stopped. Now, let's talk about the thing people obsess over too early, investing. Most people approach investing emotionally. They want it to feel exciting, smart, sophisticated. That's how they lose. The data on this is brutal. Over long periods, broad market index funds outperform the vast majority of active strategies, including professional ones, largely because they remove human interference. The biggest enemy of returns isn't fees, it isn't timing, it's behavior. Buying when things feel safe, selling when fear spikes, reacting to noise. This is why firms that track real investor outcomes consistently show the same gap. Funds perform better than the people invested in them. People sabotage themselves, which is why the system has to protect you from you. Contributions happen automatically. Investments rebalance automatically. Time does the work. The goal isn't to beat the market. It's to stay in it long enough for math to matter. Here's the part no one warns you about. Investing makes you feel poorer for a long time. Your checking account balance drops, your brain panics, and emotionally it feels like you're going backward, even when you did the right thing. This discomfort is why many people stop. Not after failure, right before compounding starts to work. Compounding is slow at first, so slow it feels pointless. Then it becomes unfair. That's not hype, that's arithmetic. Long-term market data shows that a disproportionate amount of gains happen in later years. Early contributions don't look impressive, they're laying track. This is why consistency beats intensity. A small, automated contribution sustained over time outperforms bursts of enthusiasm almost every time. Now comes a harder truth. Wealth building doesn't just require systems, it requires identity alignment. If your self-image is someone who struggles, your behavior will eventually confirm it. This isn't motivational talk, it's psychological consistency. People subconsciously act in ways that reinforce who they believe they are. This is why sudden income jumps often disappear. The money changes faster than the identity can handle. Research in psychology shows that identity-based habits last longer than goal-based ones. So the shift isn't I want more money, it's I'm someone who routes money automatically. I'm someone who lives below locked expenses. I'm someone who doesn't touch growth capital. Those identities create behavior without daily effort. Now let's kill one last myth, that wealth is about intelligence. It's not. It's about endurance. Most wealth is built slowly, quietly, and without drama, which is why it's rarely shown honestly. People want breakthroughs, windfalls, big wins,
But long-term data shows that steady accumulation beats exceptional events more often than people want to admit, especially for those who didn't start with advantages. The wealthiest households in longitudinal studies aren't the flashiest, they're the most consistent. And here's the final trap: comparison. As progress builds, you'll start noticing people who seem ahead, smarter, faster, luckier. Comparison creates impatience. Impatience leads to risk. Risk reintroduces volatility. Volatility breaks systems. This is why people blow themselves up chasing what they think they should have instead of protecting what they're already building. Wealth isn't about catching up. It's about staying unbroken long enough for time to do its job. That's the part no one celebrates, but it's the part that works. From here on, the question stops being, how do I make more? And becomes, how do I make this impossible to undo? Once that question is answered honestly, wealth stops feeling fragile. It stops depending on mood or motivation or perfect months. It becomes mechanical, quiet, relentless. And that's where people who escape permanently separate for good. They don't win louder, they just stop losing. And that changes everything.
The last mistake people make is thinking wealth is something you eventually arrive at. A finish line, a number, a feeling. That belief quietly resets everything. Because wealth isn't a destination, it's a state of operating. The people who keep it don't do different things once they make it. They just stop doing the things that used to destroy progress. And that's the shift most people never complete. Up to now, everything has been about building momentum without breaking yourself, reducing volatility, creating leverage, making progress harder to undo. But permanence requires one more layer, and this is where the conversation usually gets shallow. You'll hear phrases like invest long-term or stay disciplined. That's not enough, because discipline still assumes you'll feel tempted, and temptation never goes away. What actually works is constraint that feels normal. The reason taxes don't feel like a daily battle isn't because you love paying them. It's because they're invisible. They're gone before you can argue. Permanent wealth works the same way. By the time money becomes visible to you, its job should already be done. This is why the most effective systems are boring. Growth capital moves on autopilot. Bills are predictable. Lifestyle is capped by design. And the result is something most people don't expect. Wealth feels anticlimactic. No fireworks, no dramatic turning point, just a slow disappearance of financial fear. That's how you know it's working. Now let's talk about the part people avoid because it doesn't feel tactical. Patience. Not motivational patience, structural patience. Time is the only ingredient that can't be hacked. And this is where low-income wealth building quietly wins. People who start with less are forced to learn restraint earlier. They're forced to build systems instead of fantasies. When those systems finally meet time, the result looks disproportionate. That's why so many overnight successes are actually 10-year stories. The compounding didn't just happen in money, it happened in behavior. The real compounding effect is this. Every month you don't panic. Every year you don't reset. Every cycle you don't self-sabotage. You widen the gap between yourself and your old life. And eventually, that gap becomes permanent. Here's the thing that doesn't get said enough. Wealth doesn't require you to win constantly. It only requires you to avoid catastrophic losses. That's it. If you can avoid lifestyle explosions, emotional investing, debt spirals, reversion during comfort, time does the rest. This is why simplicity is not a beginner strategy. It's an endgame strategy. The more complex your financial life becomes, the more fragile it gets. The strongest systems are almost boring to describe. Income flows in predictable channels. Spending has a ceiling. Investing happens without debate. Risk is controlled, not eliminated. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, just durable. And durability is what separates people who touch wealth from people who keep it. Now let's address the quiet fear that sits underneath all of this. What if I do everything right and it still doesn't work? That fear is understandable, but it misunderstands how probability works. Wealth isn't binary, it's directional.
You're not betting on a single outcome, you're stacking odds. Every system you install doesn't guarantee success, it reduces the chance of failure. That's the game. Reduce failure enough times, long enough, and success becomes the default. This is why consistency feels powerful in hindsight, not because it was heroic, because it removed bad options. Now let's bring this home with something concrete. Imagine two people, same income, same age, same starting point. One chases optimization, the other chases irreversibility. One tweaks budgets monthly, the other locks systems once. One reacts to markets, the other routes money automatically. One feels smart often, the other feels calm consistently. 10 years later, the difference isn't intelligence, it's damage avoided. That's the quiet truth of wealth. Now, here's the final shift. At some point, you stop asking, how much am I worth? And start asking, how fragile is my life? Can you miss a month without panic? Can you say no to bad opportunities? Can you walk away from toxic situations? Those are wealth questions. Because the ultimate dividend of money isn't consumption, it's choice. Choice is what people actually mean when they say freedom. Freedom to wait, freedom to leave, freedom to breathe. And that freedom doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives in layers. First, emergencies stop being disastrous. Then bills stop being stressful. Then work stops being desperate. Then time opens up. By the time most people notice, they're already living differently. Not extravagantly, differently. And here's the part that makes this stick. Once you've lived without constant financial fear, you don't go back. The nervous system remembers. You stop chasing relief purchases, stop needing status signals, stop proving anything. Your spending becomes quieter, your decisions become slower, your life becomes harder to knock over. That's when wealth becomes invisible, and invisible wealth is the strongest kind, because it doesn't need defending, it just exists. This is why the end goal was never money, it was stability that compounds, control that doesn't announce itself, a life where your worst day doesn't erase years of progress. That's what you've been building this whole time. Not a number, a system that survives you being human. And once that system is in place, wealth stops feeling like something you're chasing. It feels like something that's quietly happening in the background while you live your life. That's the real finish line. Not getting rich, but getting unbreakable. And if you do this right, one day you'll look back and realize something strange. Nothing dramatic changed. You didn't win the lottery. You didn't have a viral moment. You didn't suddenly become someone else. You just stopped bleeding in small ways long enough for healing to finish. And that's when you understand the final truth. Wealth doesn't reward brilliance. It rewards survival. Stay in the game. Remove the exits. Let time work. That's how people who start with less end up with more. Not by winning harder, but by refusing to lose quietly ever again.